What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Who Wants to Brawl YouTube channel. That is not a question, that is a statement. My name is Who, and I'm letting you know I want to brawl. Here, we're all about the Magic format Brawl, specifically in regards to Magic Arena, so we don't have to worry about budget, we only have to worry about wildcards.
This episode is a new deck tech. On these episodes, I go over a new Brawl commander and walk you through my ideas and strategies of how best to build this commander. Today we're going to talk about Obosh the Prey Piercer. It's 3 generic and 2 black-red hybrid for a 3/5. It has Companion, which doesn't come up in this deck at all. It says, if a source you control with an odd converted mana cost would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that player or permanent instead. So with Obosh, as long as we have odd converted mana cost cards, we can pump out a lot of damage really quickly, and that's going to be the strategy with this deck, to just be all out aggressive, all out damage, and to see how much we can do. Alright, so keeping with the odd CMC theme of the deck, first we're going to start with 1 mana spells. Alright, for 1 mana drops, we have Archfiend's Vessel and Fearless Pup as 1 mana 1/1s. The Vessel comes with lifelink, the Pup comes with First Strike and a pump ability. When we pump up the Pup, it does even more damage with Obosh out, doing a total of 6 First Strike damage instead of just 1 First Strike damage. Great deal for this deck. And then Frostbite deals 2 damage to a creature or planeswalker for 1 mana. Then if we have 3 or more snow permanents, it deals 3 damage. With Obosh that turns into 6, a great deal. Serrated Scorpion is just a 1 mana 1/2, but if it dies, it deals 2 damage to our opponent and we gain 2 life. If Obosh is on the battlefield, it ends up dealing 4 damage instead of just 2 to our opponent when it dies, making this a great include in this deck. And then Weaponize the Monsters is a great failsafe. For 2 mana, we can sacrifice a creature and deal 2 damage to anything, with Obosh making that 4 damage. So this is a great way to use our creatures on the way out. Next up, we're going to talk about the 3 mana spells. This is where we're going to have the bulk of our deck because we don't want to have too high of casting cost cards, so that way we don't get blown out in the early game, and we don't want to have too many 1 mana spells because we don't want to get overwhelmed in the later game. So this is where we get the bulk of our deck. Anax Hardened in the Forge is a great way to deal a lot of damage really quick with Obosh. It's at least a 4/3 with Obosh on the battlefield, making it deal 8 damage in total, with a chance to do even more if we have a higher devotion to red. And Blackbloom Rogue usually gets played as a land in this deck, but it's nice to have the option of having a creature that gets bigger the later the game goes on. Bonecrusher Giant is a great way to fill in that 2 mana slot in our deck and still have a 3 mana permanent. And then Crystalline Giant is just a great 3 mana creature, especially when we can drop it on turn 3 and just let it build up over the course of a game. Grimdancer may not seem like much, but that lifelink and Death Touch, or Menace, coupled with Obosh, can deal a lot of damage and gain us a lot of life out of virtually nowhere. And then Hunted Nightmare is just a 3 mana 4/5. Hopefully the board is clear and we don't put a Death Touch counter on our creature, but worst case scenario, we're still trading 2 for 1 with this because we're likely going to deal damage to both creatures blocking it. And then Murderous Rider is just a format staple. It's also nice that when it hits the battlefield, Obosh has to deal 4 damage and we can gain even more life back. This deck does have trouble in that 2 mana slot, so gaining life from our 3 mana things is vital to overcoming that slow start. And speaking of gaining life, we have Nighthawk Scavenger, which has Death Touch, Lifelink, and Flying, and its power is equal to 1 plus the number of card types in our opponent's graveyard. Hopefully we'll have 2 or 3 in their graveyard at this point, and this will be gaining us a lot of life. As I said, the life gain, very important in this deck, and that's what we want to have a focus on. And Palladium Myr is just a great creature. It ramps us up 2 mana. Hopefully this means we have 6 mana on turn 4, and at the very least we'll have 5 and be able to play Obosh. And I just really like Skyclave Geopede. It's a nice 3 mana 3/1, but it gets +2/+2 when a land enters the battlefield under our control. It has trample. I just like it a lot, and in this deck it can pump out a lot of damage. And then Varragoth is a great way to make sure we get the card we need at the right time. With its Boast ability, we can get any card out of our deck and make sure we draw it next turn, hitting vital land drops or having that removal spell we need, and being able to stall with Varragoth's Death Touch. And Deathbloom Thallid is nothing special, but it deals 6 damage when Obosh is out, and that's really all we care about. As for 3 mana removal, we have Demon Bolt. This is great because we can foretell it on turn 2, still have a 3 mana spell to cast, and only cast it for 1 mana. And then Flame Spill just deals 4 damage to a creature, and then the excess damage is dealt to our opponent. There's a weird interaction here where if it doubles the damage, it still has to deal a total of 3 to a 3 toughness creature. The creature will still take 6, and then there's only 1 damage left over. It's a weird rules interaction, but just know that this still does deal double damage to the opponent. It just probably doesn't deal as much as you want it to. And then Molten Blast deals 2 damage to a creature or planeswalker, up to 4 with Obosh, or we can destroy an artifact. And then Soul Sear is great because there's a lot of indestructible running around right now, and Soul Sear makes any creature it targets lose indestructible. It also deals 5 damage, which can be up to 10, with Obosh on the battlefield, killing just about anything in the format. And then Tundra Fumarole just does 3 mana and deals 4 damage, and then we get back the amount of snow mana we put into it. This is great to remove something on the same turn we end up casting Obosh, and hopefully we already have a board state at that point, and our board can get in for a lot of damage. And then Elspeth's Nightmare is just one of my favorite cards in the format. It's certainly my favorite black removal spell in the format. I just throw it in all of my decks. It always puts in work. I love the card. You know what it does at this point. And Poison the Cup is just a 3 mana destroy a creature, but if we foretell it and cast it for its foretell cost, we get to scry 2. Don't underestimate that scry 2. And especially that foretell allows us to play something on turn 2, always vital for this deck. And now, for the heavy hitters in our deck, we have the 5 mana spells. And then we have Chandra, Heart of Fire. With this deck, a lot of the time we're going to be wanting to do that second ability to deal 2 damage. Hopefully it will be 4 damage with Obosh. That takes out a lot of creatures and a lot of blockers, paving the way for our creatures to do a massive amount of damage. It is nice in a pinch that we can basically discard our hand and draw 3 cards, especially because in playtesting this deck, we tend to burn through our hand pretty quickly, so we actually do end up using this a little bit more than I initially thought with the deck. And then Purphoros, Bronze Blooded, is a nice way to give all of our creatures haste. Very important in this deck because we want those creatures to be doing as much damage as possible. And then Terror of the Peaks in this deck can just do a massive amount of damage because its damage gets doubled. Clackbridge Troll is one of the MVPs in this deck. Our opponents don't want us swinging in for what will essentially be 16 damage, so we always gain life. As I said earlier in the video, is very important to this deck, and draw cards. As I also said from the Chandra, we tend to burn out quickly. This is an MVP. And then Goldspan Dragon is one of the best creatures in Brawl at the moment, specifically Brawl or Standard, because when we attack, we get a treasure, and this allows us to make sure we hit our next creature, probably Obosh with this already on the battlefield, and then swing in for an incredible amount of damage. And Quakebringer arguably has its best home in an Obosh deck because you can foretell it on turn 2, vital to an Obosh deck to play something on turn 2. Same thing with an Obosh deck on turn 4, and it's still an odd CMC creature, meaning we can still double the damage and get it out a turn early. And since we can't count out entirely even mana cards, we're going to finish our deck off with some 2 mana spells. Alright, and for the even mana spells that made this deck, we have Arcane Signet, a format staple. I've had it in just about every Brawl deck, and it goes in just about every single one. You don't need me to talk about it. Pretty much the same thing with Feed the Serpent. It's a great removal spell, and it's black that gets rid of enchantments. You don't see that too often. And Purphoros' Intervention and Shatterskull Passing are great because we can make X equal to something that makes this spell odd CMC and do twice as much damage. And here we have another one of my absolute favorite cards. Shredded Sail goes in every red deck, and I'm going to keep pumping the tires of Shredded Sail and wilt until they rotate out of Brawl. Put them in your decks. And to round things out, we're going to talk about our land. We have Blightstep Pathway, Command Tower, and Temple of Malice to help us with our fixing. Evolving Wilds and Fabled Passage are each fetch lands that can go get whatever land we need. And Spikefield Hazard is played as a land most often in this deck, so this is where I'm counting it, but it does synergize nicely with our commander when we need it to, by being a 1 mana spell that deals 1 damage. And then we top it off with 9 each of Snow-Covered Mountains and Snow-Covered Swamps. So that was the first build of the deck. Now, I'm going to throw in a little bit of a bonus. I'm going to tell you what I would take out and how I would upgrade it. Our first upgrade, we're going to take out Frostbite and put in Shock. I think I was just overthinking this one. Shock just tends to be better because it can hit our opponents straight up and Frostbite can't. And this doing lethal for 4 damage comes up more often than Frostbite taking care of a 6 toughness creature. Next, I would take out Purphoros Bronze-Blooded and put in Crystal Slipper. This gives our creatures haste much faster and hits that ever-important turn 2 spell. And then the final upgrade, I would take out Deathbloom Thallid and put in Crashing Drawbridge. As I said in my review, I was not that impressed with Deathbloom Thallid, and giving our creatures haste will be far more important than putting in a mediocre creature. So that does it for Obosh the Prey Piercer. What did you think of this video? Do you want to give this deck a shot? If you do, would you want to make changes? Do you think I put in some cards that you wouldn't have? Would you have put some cards in that I didn't think of? Let me know in the comments below. And that does it for this video. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe. Share with a friend to help the channel grow. Hit that bell icon to make sure you get notifications about new videos to make sure you don't miss anything. I also want to give a shout out to my buddy Rob Slota for making the Who Wants to Brawl logo. He is a tattoo artist, and you can check out his Instagram by following the link in the show notes below. You can email me at whowantstobrawl@gmail.com. My Twitter is @brawlwho. I also stream on Magic Arena at twitch.tv/whowantstobrawl. Check me out on Sundays at 11 in the morning where I stream last week or next week's deck tech. On Mondays I stream random decks. Sometimes I do Brawl, sometimes I'll even throw in a draft. I also stream a random day of the week, or at least I try to. This is Random Games. Follow me on Twitter and I'll let you know when I'm going to play ahead of time and what I'm going to play ahead of time. But for now, this is Who letting you know I no longer want to brawl. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.